Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
In our unbridled haste to cover as much as humanly possible, sometimes things get run over. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because you're listening. So please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, I'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads. I'm losing track. We're everywhere. At In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats. InTheSeats.ca for all latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when we come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. On this episode, well, we're looking at something that's been out on VOD for a while. Sadly, it fell through the cracks. But it's a good little movie. You should check it out. It's called Star People. And it's the story of a photographer who receives a tip that could shed some light on her childhood UFO sightings, but a heatwave and some unexpected guests threaten to derail her entire investigation. A little piece of indie cinema that's inspired by some real-life UFO sighting and events, mostly around the Phoenix area, and it's all kind of intertwined into that. And it's well done. It allows for a little bit of mystery and a little bit of whodunit and sort of the idea of, looking up into the stars and wondering if it's true or if I just made it up or what's going on. But it's from writer-director Adam Finberg, and we had a unique chance of sitting down and talking with him about the movie and what inspired it and all that sort of fun stuff. But like I said, go check out Star People. It's on all your video on-demand platforms now. But first, enjoy our talk with Adam Finberg because it's a pretty darn good one. Man, I watched it last night. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I guess the first question is, walk me through the origin of it all, because it feels very sort of, on one end, half trying to be respectful of the idea of community that comes around these events, but also the other half is kind of embracing sort of the weird shit of it all.
Yeah. So I grew up in Phoenix, and back in 1997, there was this incident called the Phoenix Lights. Had you heard of the Phoenix Lights before watching this?
I have, yeah. I was going to ask you about that, but yeah.
So I was in high school at the time. I didn't see them, but I knew people who did. And, it was talked about for many years, and it always was very compelling. It was very mysterious, and I was always interested in it. And, no one's ever really answered what it is. Some people claim to, some people don't. I thought it was a fascinating jumping off point for a story, and I have always been sort of a space nerd and grew up in the era of Carl Sagan and the Voyager missions, and when the universe was starting to come into focus for humanity. And now we see these pictures all the time, but back in the 80s, this was not. It was felt very new to me, and as a kid, and so that was one element of it. I also love the setting of Arizona. As far as the characters go, though, I directed a film about a documentary about 10 years ago called The Business of Recovery, which took me around the country meeting people who were in the throes of addiction. And I got to learn firsthand a lot about how people process trauma, and also from a lot of experts in the field of addiction and the psychology of change. And some of the people I met during that time too, unfortunately died due to substance abuse or alcohol-related deaths, and some passed after the making of the film. And, those stories and the people I met always kind of haunted me. And I think that when I was developing this story for Star People, those were just very forefront in my mind in terms of just character sort of pieces that sort of that I really wanted to incorporate into the story. And then other elements of the migrant story. This was written a few years ago, but Arizona's always been a border state, sure. And stories about people dying in the desert have always been very present. And I just was a story I was felt compelled to write after, having learned a lot about what goes on out there, that sort of out of sight, out of mind for many people.
No, 100%, 100%. How do you manage to? Because like I said, I mean, I did notice some like beats from the Phoenix story, and just sort of, and I could draw the comparisons there. But I'm curious, in something like this, how do you sort of separate the fact from fiction? I suppose is the best way to put it.
Fact from fiction. Well, the only fact, I guess you could say, is that a lot of people saw these lights, you're right, in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sky. I mean, as far as everything else in the story, I mean, it is a work of fiction. The characters are all fictional. You know, I mean, I guess to separate fact from fiction, I mean, the story is about, connectedness and belief and like, those, I mean, I guess it's like, I mean, to separate anything, I don't think the story claims anything that's not necessarily
No, no, no. But I
true
mean,
in terms
I
of,
think more maybe to just be respectful of sort of the experience of the people who did see the lights. Probably the best way to put
oh,
it.
well, there were different experiences of them. When I was researching that, some people took video of the lights look different for some people that saw it firsthand. And I mean, I've talked to people who've seen them firsthand. There wasn't any, what's really unusual about it is that there are several different ways it's been described in terms of how they looked, the formation, how many lights.
Mm.
And there weren't as many cameras then either because this was in 1997. Most people didn't have a camera ready to just go.
Now, I mean, talk to me a little bit about your ensemble because I mean, obviously, you got some great actors in this, and I mean, it really brings together the ideas that you have going on in the film. I mean, everyone does a really great job here.
The cast, they're a very talented group. And, from the first day working with my casting directors, Helen, and Kendra, who were casting my leads, I wanted to find the best I could find for these characters. I mean, I had to believe them, and so much of this is done on Zoom these days with auditions.
Mm.
And I just knew if I was moved seeing a performance on a crappy Zoom audition, I knew it would be even bigger once we got it in front of on the set. But it started with Claire, and then once we had Kat Cunning in as Claire, it was really about finding her, Claire's brother, finding the right chemistry, finding that we believed that they were brother and sister, and then Eddie, who I cast as Ricardo. After I'd cast him, he suggested I watch a tape of his daughter. Because Adriana is his real life daughter who plays his daughter
Wow.
in the film. And I hadn't, I was like, sure, let's take a look. I mean, I was considering a number of, people for Girls for Gabby, but she was great. And obviously they had built-in father-daughter chemistry. So I went with that.
From your perspective, what is it about sort of that magic of wanting to look up? Because I mean, some people couldn't be bothered. Some people are terrified by it, but there are some people who just want to know more.
Well, it's interesting because the idea of ETs and extraterrestrials, storytelling has either gone towards the horror side,
Right,
which is
right.
it's a very easy button to push, or some go towards the benevolent side. There's like ET and Close Encounter. There's two ways to kind of go at it, but the unknown is naturally something I think people are afraid of, and the unknown can mean a lot of things. For me, this whole like we are not alone is something a little more universal because the meaning of it actually goes back centuries to biblical texts and philosophical texts. The idea of not being alone, that God is with you, or not being alone, that you're connected to people around you. And now it's like people look up to ask, are they not alone? But to me, some of that might just be that we're in a more and more isolated society where we're surrounded by people, but yet we're feeling alone.
You talk a little bit about how you wanted the film to look because I mean something I really appreciated is just I mean again playing with light and shadow, especially in things going on at night. Because I mean, let's face the reality, you are an independent filmmaker, you're working on a certain degree of a budget. If you have one shot in there where you're trying to have a big reveal and it doesn't look that good, you'll take people out of the movie. You didn't do that here. How did you manage to sort of avoid that pitfall?
Well, that's a good. How did we do that? There's always a little luck involved. But with this, there was a lot of planning that went into the visual structure. I mean, coming to a set and having a very limited amount of time to get the scene, to get it all
Right.
in the can is very challenging. And I think as a director, you have to be very flexible about attaining your so-called vision. It's less about I don't know what this movie is going to look like when I start it. I just know what my jumping off point is, what the feelings, the vibes, the tones, the color palette, the space that I'm trying to portray is, and having good conversations with my creative team around me, having everyone on the same page gets us to, I think, a finish line that like is cohesive and makes sense. And to be planning it out as best as we can ahead of time. I mean, I had to be, very intentional about everything we were trying to do. And, there were a lot of things that I couldn't do that I had to make I had to change because of limitations on time. I mean, time was really the biggest limitation. I mean, I only have so many days to shoot this. So how do we do it? I don't know. I think it was just as planning as best we could, and then just being able to kind of bend with the breeze, I guess.
Preparation. I like that. I like that. Now, I mean, this is the loaded question, but it's one I have to ask. Like, do you believe? Because I mean, obviously, I can imagine doing research on something like this can change the goalpost for you, either positively or negatively.
Do I believe? I do believe. I do think, though, that what we see may not be so clearly defined as spaceships the way we like to conventionally think about them. I think there are things in the universe that are undescribable, and that's kind of a hard thing to talk about as people, because we think everything's describable. But if you were in a two-dimensional universe, a 3D object, you wouldn't really be able to see that. You would just see a slice of it. I think that there are other intelligences out there for sure, and that there is a possibility we're seeing things that we cannot really comprehend, to be honest, that we're maybe seeing a tiny piece of. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. And this is a silly question, but it's one I always like to ask. What were the movies that, as a kid, sort of had the light bulb go off for you that made you want to get into this business? And were they movies that sort of made you look up?
Yeah, I mean, Close Encounters was always a movie that always grabbed me. And there are some parallels to obviously in our film, but I mean, movies as a filmmaker, ones that I loved, like Brazil was a film as I became.
Nice.
There's something about that movie that always, both in the visual structure and the storytelling, and just the fact that it's very untraditional in the arc of it. That one's always grabbed me. I mean, I loved films by David Fincher. Also, the kind of, I think things that that really focused on filmmaking as almost like a dream but you're awake for. I think I'm drawn towards storytelling that's able to kind of do that. I think it was like Ingmar Bergman, I'm trying to think who the quote was from. It was like film as dream. It's just the idea that films are a version of dreaming. Like David Lynch was very good at doing that. I mean, his films were, I don't claim that I'm not quite on that level in terms of experimentalness in some of his movies, but like he really could make it. I felt like I was in a dream when I would like watch those movies, and I think maybe that's why I like Brazil so much, because it is a very dream. It does a lot about dreams, and it's very unusual. But I don't know. Those are some of my influences, I guess.
Well, but I mean, you know what though? I mean, it's one of those things where, in watching this film, I could appreciate the cinematic nature of it all, because I mean, again, like I said, on one end there is sort of the embracing the gonzo and sort of being brought up to the lights and what happens and all the tension, all that weird stuff, but there's also the community and the psychological drama that goes on with these people who have seen and who do believe and who may have been abducted or may have had something happen to them. This really manages to straddle the line between sort of both of those stories. And I thought this was a really unique take on it. But I mean, again, man, just congrats on the work and thank you for the time today. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you. Thanks for chatting.
Pleasure meeting you. All right.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.